have come across like many different stories of people being sent to these um, mandatory education programs on gender in college. Like you go to the How Not to Rape course if you're a man, and it's mandatory for you to pass your course. You have to attend this like several days of woke propaganda about various what's the word like various subjects how consent and things like that, but it's all framed through a gender studies lens, and it's all set up with loose model stuff, and you know the sort of thing. And I was wondering if anyone here had had any experience of these things, because I've come across a few stories and they're kind of
Mike's on. Can you
terrifying.
hear me?
Oh, hi, Blue. Did you have some
Hey,
microphone problems?
I just got it fixed. I'll be in and out though. I'm actually doing some errands, and I got a new job, so it's kind of
Okay.
crazy right now. But basically, what you're saying is what the UK does right now with female offenders, and what I'm expecting is going to happen in the US in the next few months or years with the Biden administration. Um, And it's so hypocritical because feminists keep talking about how they think gender is a harmful construct. And they talk about how harmful, toxic masculinity is because of, rigid gender roles of men being strong, women being weak. But then as soon as it comes to something like alternatives to prison and community service, suddenly feminists are completely on board with the idea of, oh, yes, we can't punish women as harshly. We have to go easy on them because they're weaker, because they're less capable than men, because, oh, she's just a woman. You can't hold her accountable for her actions like you do a man. It's like a complete hypocritical 180. As soon as their ideology represents a potential inconvenience to women, they do a complete 180 on whatever they say. So everything they say about being gender neutral and how gender is just a construct, challenge them. Okay, so why do you feel that you should have gendered prison policies? Why do you feel that you should have gendered policies on domestic violence? It's just feminists will say whatever at the moment is beneficial to them, and they'll contradict themselves 10 minutes later without a second thought.
They absolutely will, because it's not about equality, or as they put it, equity, which is a different thing, which sounds similar but isn't. It's all about creating a matriarchy, because they see men as the enemy, and they see society as a way to benefit themselves, and they want to create a new order, basically, where they are on the top and they get to dictate everything. And if you doubt that, then I suggest you take a look at how many special commissions and boards and bureaus that are specially dedicated to women's issues that men also have, and there will be no equivalent board for men. And these are government boards, these are in companies, these are everywhere. Just look on the websites for the American government, and there will be a lot more of these under Biden. There will be an awful lot more. I've heard he's already trying to create one. I can't remember what it was called, but it was another one of these special task forces for women.
Which, of course, the hypocrisy there is that when feminists support special laws for women or gendered programs for women, they're reinforcing gender roles and they're reinforcing separation of gender. So when they say they want things to be gender neutral, they support things that are the opposite of gender neutral and actually drive differences in gender.
Well, yeah, I mean, as soon as you propose a gender neutral rape law with no mention of men or women in it, they come out of the woodwork to scream it and say it's going to hurt women. It's, I mean, it's something that's akin to a Moss and Bailey argument, except there's no Moss and there's no Bailey. It's just two different positions they seesaw between, depending on which one it helps them the most. I'm not sure what fallacy it is, but it's definitely a fallacy. I mean, it's they don't have a specific concrete position. They have two, and they'll cycle between them depending on which one helps them at that instant the most. But all their language is based around this dual position, so they can flip between them between sentences, and it's really quite frustrating.
I always wonder, don't male feminists ever notice these hypocrisies, like the way they're treated and the way they're spoken to? It doesn't it ever occur to them what's happening? Like, don't they ever get a sense of like of any of the stuff that we're talking about? I mean, we notice it, we can see it. Imagine being a man who is dating one of those feminists or is active in one of those feminist organizations. How do you not notice what's happening to yourself?
I've never got the impression they were all that honest as a whole, but there a lot of male feminists do notice this, but then they stay quiet because they're also incredibly passive and submissive because they've been taught that basically women have to rule and stuff like that, and they're like, they just like they go along with it, and then they're not allowed. I mean, we had an example, an article ages and ages ago about this MRA guy who joined a gender studies class, and then they relentlessly bullied him until he gave up his position. It was
He was a
like,
student.
yeah, he was a student, and they said, oh yeah, yeah, we study men as well. We have all of these like books on the male perspective, but they're not on the male perspective really. They're
So
on
it's on the feminist perspective of the male perspective.
yeah,
It's basically their explanation to men what their own perspective should be.
yes,
Yeah, and that's what
and
they do. I mean, one of the most hypocritical things is when feminists talk about mansplaining and men talking over women's lived experiences. But that's what they do to us all the time. And even the simple fact of being critical of the men's rights movement is talking over men's lived experience. Like when feminists tell MRAs that we're wrong about male issues, it's like, wait a minute, who are you to tell us that we're wrong about our own lived experience? Like, we're not asking you this is happening. We're telling you this is happening to us. This happened to me. I'm not asking for your opinion. I'm explaining to you what happened, what's happening. This is the law on conscription. This is the law on pension ages. This is what happens to homeless men in the UK who apply for shelter. These are the stats in unemployment. These are the stats in college graduation. This is not an opinion or a perspective or a talking point. These are facts that we're coming to you. This is the official statistic on life expectancy. This is the official statistic on cardiovascular disease rates. This is the official statistics on a million different things we can bring up. And they always say the same thing. Oh, well, the feminist response to that, the feminist theory, oh, the toxic masculinity aspect. But it's like, no, we're not asking you to lecture us. We're asking you to listen. I wouldn't tell a woman what having a period is like. I wouldn't lecture a woman on what having a period is like. But they lecture us on what circumcision is like. They lecture us on what toxic masculinity is like. It's like, it's not about you. You don't know. It's just the
well,
hypocrisy drives me insane.
this is why you have to tell them that they are denying your lived experiences and like use these feminist buzzwords that they throw at you. Like tell them they're derailing. Tell them all these things like this, and make sure that you hammer into them their own buzzwords because they can't argue against their own logic. As crappy as their logic is, if you use it against them, that's how you break their argument. Like in the most, you know, in the fastest way. It's very easy to do. It's like rape culture is a good example. Tell them yes, there is a rape culture. It denies the lived experiences of men, and it's created by feminists. And I can prove it. Here are all the stats. We've got lectures on it. We've got everything.
And it just goes to show how their arguments and their ideology, it's not organic. It's not something that they spontaneously think about or arrive at through critical thinking. It's learned buzzwords. It's like rehearsed lines that they see on Twitter or Tumblr or Reddit or Instagram, and they learn these lines and these buzzwords, and they just kind of repeat them. And they see other people around them repeating them, and everyone they know repeats them, and so they begin to take it as fact. And so they begin to take things like toxic masculinity or the men's rights movement is just reactionary. To them, they think this is objective fact because everyone around me thinks the same thing. And so they think anyone disagreeing with them is just using a talking point or just being a misogynist. And they're unable to break out of that.
Well, they are to a large extent, and the problem with the way they've set their movement up is very tribalistic. They've basically constructed it so that if you attack their reasoning, you're attacking women. That's why they use the word feminist and woman interchangeably, even though only a tiny number of women are actually feminists. It's uh, it's very interesting, yeah, how they do it. It I mean gender studies, it has a kind of a legalistic um rules lawyery sort of vibe. I mean, if you've ever come across a game player or someone like that who will basically ignore the rules that don't benefit them and will, be hyper vigilant about the rules that do benefit them, and try to, wiggle around all of the rules and things like that. That's what they're like. That's why they have these read. That's why they redefine words, because it helps them to, if they can propagate their version of the word, their meaning of the word, then they can control the argument and control the debate. It's stuff that's directly out of George Orwell's 1984. It really is. I encourage everyone to read that book because it's a blueprint for how they work. They redefine words, they redefine language, they make words verboten, they make words into like,
Animal Farm, too.
yeah, yeah, Animal Farm as well. They're very much, a part of that. And I have to wonder, like, if there's, it feels so aggressively anti-cultural that it feels like, they're basically sabotaging our culture for personal gain, and it's horrifying. I mean, this is how they end up with these lectures where they say, "Oh, we will use abortion and we will use selective fertilization and stuff like that to create a culture that's 90% female." I mean, that's absolutely insane, but it gets a pass because it's in the academia and it's put in nicey nice language, and then the activists and people who actually read it, who are heavily like on this viewpoint already, don't mention it. I mean, I've tried to put Sally Miller Gerhardt on her Wikipedia page, these quotes where she says that the population will be, we will have a 90% female population, and she wants to get rid of like 90% of all men through basically eugenics. And it will not last 10 minutes because they watch that page heavily for that specific quote and they knock it off every time it appears. Even if you're citing her own book, and they'll get rid of it and they won't allow it on there.
I mean, look at the way Cassie J was treated. And the way even Warren Farrell was treated, and Cathay in Canada were treated when they would try and do talks or seminars or screenings at universities or theaters. I mean, there were bomb threats, there were death threats. The one video, of course, the famous example of running in and pulling the fire alarm, violent protests, threatening protests. I mean, like, that's what fascism is. I mean, it's intimidating people with violence because of other political opinions. And the the opinion. I mean, it's not even like we're saying. It's like whenever someone talks about free speech. It's like the issue to me isn't even the free speech of the men's rights movement. It's the fact that what we're saying is very rational and fair and normal. It's not like we have extreme views, but well, free speech is free speech, so we should still be allowed to say it. I mean, our extreme views are things like violence against men should be taken seriously. Baby boys shouldn't be mutilated at birth. Men's health care should get equal funding. Men shouldn't have higher pension ages. Men shouldn't be forced in the military against their will. And we're labeled extremists for that. It's absolutely insane. Whereas feminists support laws like women should be exempt from prison, domestic violence against men should be legal. And they're the ones who are called progressive and rational and liberal and moderate. I don't understand it.
Oh, well,
It's
you see,
they're also terrorists.
in when we look at the whole feminist movement, yeah, you should understand that the feminist movement actually was able to take off because men decided to help these women who wanted to have the right to equal opportunity. Men have always been trying to help women in every way they can through this whole feminist walk. But in recent times, they've I don't know how the narrative has been twisted. I don't get it. It's We've been demonized and we've been seen as these people who are out to destroy the world and make all women submit under some oppressive rule. That doesn't make any sense because if we look at uh the way things are going now, women, this is the best time to be a woman, honestly speaking, because you have healthcare, you can vote, you have the right to make career choices, you can choose not to get married, you can choose not to have children, and no one will judge you for that. You are at liberty to make whatever decisions you want. But for some reason, people still think there's this massive oppression going on around the world. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And that thing about where we try to be rational and we try to be cool, calm, and collected and try to be respectful of other people's views, and they act all violent and things like that. I remember watching this I think it was Jordan Peterson, yes, one of his lectures in Canada, and a group of people just stormed the room, lifting up banners and yelling profanities while they were having a cool lecture. It was a serene environment. The ambience was just lovely. It was a place to actually have meaningful discussions and come out with ideas and solutions to problems. But these people just waltz right in there, start accusing everyone in that room of being uh, oppressive, misogynistic, all kinds of words, calling all kinds of names, and they expect that when you act like this, you act all violent, all narcissistic, you expect people to respect you in return? It doesn't work that way. I mean, respect is earned. You don't get to insult someone for having his own views and expect that same person to respect you back. It just doesn't work that way.
Well, that's of
Well,
course where the bullying and the intimidation comes in. They make you respect them, or else.
and then they
That's
rely on the women are wonderful effect when you accuse them of being violent. It is that Moss and Bailey thing again. They'll be aggressive and fascistic, and they will try to take your voice away and stop you talking. But the moment that you accuse them of being fascistic and trying to stop you talking, they'll retreat to this thing of being a victim of you, and they'll say that you're a violent misogynist and you're trying to take away my rights and you're trying to hurt me because the number one thing that every tribe has ever done since the language existed was say that tribe over there, they want to hurt our women, therefore they should be destroyed. And what they mean by destroyed is the menfolk. They'll destroy all of the they'll
That's
kill
merely
all of the
control.
men. Yeah, they'll kill all of the men, and then the two tribes will become one, with the women is forcibly taken into the tribe, or they run off into the wilderness and they die. and that's basically how it has worked, you know, always. And that's bad for both genders. And people really need to realize that. Like, there's no winner there in that other tribe that gets destroyed. I mean, there are people who are worse off, the men, who get absolutely, murdered. But there's no winners there at all. And I think that this is what we're playing out on a much larger scale with the university riots and things like that, and all
That's
that
it's
sort of stuff.
That's exactly what milieu control is. It's the controlling of language, and it's the creation of an enemy in people's minds. And it's an isolation of certain groups and certain ideas. And one of the way it works is by controlling language. And I notice there are so many words that I feel like I'm not allowed to use that they use all the time. Um, and I hate to kind of segue into this because this is not a political channel. It's not a pro Republican or pro Democrat or pro right or pro left channel, and the men's rights movement is not pro right or pro left. However, I am seeing an example happening right now in politics with the word fight and all this attention that left wing media sources are using on Trump using the word fight to incite violence. They use the word fight. Those same media outlets use the word fight all the time. Fight against fascism, fight against racism, fight against sexism, fight against whatever it is. They use the word fight all the time. And now they're trying to make it a special thing that Trump used the word fight. It's a way of controlling language. Ma, I don't know if you just missed what I said, but it's about how a lot of liberal media outlets are accusing Trump of being insightful of violence for using the word fight when they use the word fight all the time. Like a fight against Trump, fight against fascism, fight against racism, fight against this or that. It's so hypocritical. This way of controlling language.
Biden,
Yeah,
Biden
it's
himself
duck
had
speak.
said once that he basically just said, if you were in high school, I would take you outside the gym and I will knock you the hell out. He said it. He said it out
Who
there.
said that?
And yeah, he did.
Who said that?
He did say that at one of his
Yeah, I
rallies.
Who?
remember that. I remember
Yeah,
Biden
he
said
was
that.
talking about
Trump.
how someone did something. He was like, if he were in high school, he would take you behind the gym and he will beat the shit out of you. He said that flat out. But then people don't act. They act like, yo, Biden is this saint. Well, I'm not. I'm not pro Democrat. I'm not pro Republican. I'm none of that. I like to walk my path in such a way that whatever doesn't negatively affect me, I'm cool with it. You understand? But one thing I don't understand is this blatant delusion that comes with, like, people look at one person and they see this person as their savior and they act like he is absolved of any wrongdoing whatsoever. And it's mind-boggling to me. It doesn't make sense. People have used those same words. People have said and done similar things, even worse things, but then they are not judged at all. At all. Same goes for this feminine movement thing. There was this lady, what was her name? I forgot. She wrote that the scum something against men manifesto, some manifesto, which basically said that women should just get rid of men. Like, men don't need to exist. A lot of misandrous thing. She actually attempted to kill. She tried to kill someone, a famous Hollywood producer, because that person wouldn't want to produce a film version of her book. She shot him 3 times, him and his assistant. And for what reason? It just, and she was let off the hook. Funny enough, she was let off the hook. And I'm like, feminist media promotes violence in its own way, but they act like it doesn't exist. And even if it does exist, they manage to twist the narrative and say it's because of men that feminists became violent. I mean, how does that work?
Young women and girls, and young people in general too, who kind of get into leftist, feminist, progressive, social justice spheres on social media and communities, they are being conditioned to see men, and depending on the country, especially white men, but all men of any race in general, as being the worst kind of people, like the lesser kind of person, like the not as good kind of person. Like, oh, men are these lesser kind of people where they don't need as much help, and when bad things happen to them, it's not as bad, and they have this inherent privilege. And women are being taught to think that men are hurting you, and men constantly support a system that hurts you, and that you're behind where you should be because of men around you, and you're being hurt in your life because of the men around you, and your daughter's being hurt in your life because of the men around you. And it's being conditioned in people's brains so much that people do start to believe it. And what's scary is when you look at almost any example of genocide or fascism or dictatorship, what we're seeing now and in the last 5 years looks like the early stages of that. Now, obviously, it's not genocide or fascism now against men, obviously, but what we're seeing now is what you see in the 10, 15, 20 years leading up to it. The early steps, the small steps first. And then 5 years, it's two different court systems for men and women. And then 10 years, it's two different university systems for men and women. And then 15 years, it's two different health systems for men and women. And then in 20 years, it's, well, women are giving social credit and men aren't. And then in 25 years as well, men aren't allowed to buy houses in certain, and it just kind of goes on and on and on. And then it slowly builds over time. And we're in the early stages, possibly, of something like that right now.
This is why they wanted an all-female, all-feminist Supreme Court. Like they've been quite open about wanting that for as long, they say for as long as there has been a male Supreme Court, we want to have a female Supreme Court. So however
So
many hundreds of years.
I would assume that they'd want to have an all-female draft for as long as there's been an all-male draft to
Oh goodness, no,
equalize that too. Oh, of
Oh
course. Oh
heavens!
no,
Oh
really?
no!
Oh,
No! No! No!
oh,
No!
of
No!
no,
course not.
no.
That's so odd. Why wouldn't they want something equal?
Mm.
You know,
It's
there was one thing
that
that
same
Jordan
rules
Peterson
lawyering.
said. One thing that Jordan Peterson said that really resonated with me. He was like, "You can have equality, like equal opportunity, but you cannot have equal outcome. It's you can control equal opportunity. You can control what is available to people, but as to what they will pick and what they will choose is something that you cannot control. You understand? So these feminists, yeah, are acting as if not only do they want the opportunities, they want women to have the same choices and make the same decisions as men. And when women are not doing that, they start blaming the patriarchy. The patriarchal society has brainwashed women into making certain decisions and has um, kind of gaslighted women into thinking that this is their part in society. And they start. I don't know. The mental gymnastics is something that I I've been trying to understand. I've been trying to keep track. Is it always throws me off every single time, and
I
it's
think
just
it goes. Sorry, I was just gonna say I think it goes deeper than that. I think they want to actually take over the good role. Well, it's quite open that they want to take over the good roles that men have. They want every woman to be a male CEO, basically, and they want every woman to have be artificially boosted to the most successful position they possibly can be. And it's like, of course, with the feminists ruling above even them, but it's like they do all this rules lawyering stuff, and they, it's like you said, they don't want an all-female draft, but they do want an all-female Supreme Court, and it's just like, I mean, like I said a few times, they want a matriarchy because they feel like like men have had this system forever, and so somebody has to be the winner, and so it should be them. So they basically decided to replace the patriarchy with a matriarchy, and they feel like it has to be one or the other. I think it's the same way with FGM, where if you say you're anti-MGM, you'll get feminists who scream at you and say, no, FGM's worse. That's not an argument. It's like being run over is worse than uh, being pushed over. But we don't want people being pushed over either. It's like it's just it's a false dichotomy where they set up so that women have to have the good thing, so men have to have the bad thing. And I think they do it deliberately to get like the whole thing. It's like with domestic violence, where they'll say that if men are allowed in, then that will take money away from women. Well, we could enlarge the pie there. We could add more funding, which is especially for men. But no, they don't want that because that funding wouldn't be going to women. They want all of the funding. And it betrays an intense selfishness and an intense focus on, a preference for their own gender over everyone else. That they do this, and it's quite psychopathic, really. I mean, they'll just say, "Oh yeah, yeah, that would take money away from women," as if that was an argument. In a fair and equal society, that would be like, "But, but I want everything." It's like that little kid who says, "No, you can't have any of the sweeties. All the sweeties are for me," and then grabs the big bucket of sweeties that's supposed to be for everyone. Like that's exactly what they're doing. They're trying to get everything. Everything good has to be for them. Everything bad has to be for men. And yeah, the only reason they're able to succeed is because everyone has this cognitive bias towards women. I mean, I don't know if any of the new people here have seen the stats we have on the website, but we've got several studies showing that men and women both favor women over men, and feminists favor women even more. Like, there's a study there that says that women, female feminists will kill men over women at an even greater rate than the average population, and male feminists will as well.
But you see, when we talk about, like, for example, the thing you talked about, women and men having the same workspace and all that, and they don't want men to have it because they get more money and everything. You know, one thing that we need to come to an understanding is, if we want to build an egalitarian society where both sides have equal opportunity and all that, we need to understand that if you want something, you have to present it on merit. You have to be presented on merit. These feminists don't want that. They want that based off the fact that they are women. You know, because I've worked in corporation before, and men were getting promoted and all that. Women were getting promoted as well. But then if you look at the women who were getting promoted, they had the same qualifications as the men, or even greater. They put in the same hours of work as the men. They basically did the same things the men were doing, and they got what they deserved. But no, these feminists would prefer to take 6 hours off and still demand that they get the same promotion or the same pay as the person who worked 12 hours or 16 hours. And and when you tell them that this is the reality, that most women do not put in the same hours of work as a man, they do not they do not have the same level of qualification, despite the fact that educational systems are geared to help women progress faster than men, they still do not have the same qualifications to advance in the workplace. These feminists still, I don't know, they still have some weird narrative that they're able to spew out. It's just,
Well, they'll point to the male CEOs being in charge, and they'll go, "Aha! See, men are favored," and that will be their only evidence.
but
It's
like I
it's
said, you
all.
said male
Hmm.
CEOs, but then, like I said, if we look at the women who want to advance or the women who are advancing, they have the same qualifications as the men, and they are going ahead. You, on the other hand, don't. So why are you complaining? You say male CEOs. Then why is it that the VP is a female and she has the same qualifications? And you're sitting down there and you're complaining. What's the problem?
Yeah,
I have a question.
go on.
Like almost everybody in this Discord call has been saying they. Who's they? I feel like you guys are indulging in the same tribalism as they do. Or they, obviously.
They, you know who they is, fam.
Yeah, but like you say they. You say that all feminists just absolutely hate men and they wish genocide. That's not true.
Okay,
I mean,
No,
fair
No,
enough.
it's not.
I
I mean,
didn't say all.
to be
different,
fair,
different
it's,
like
it's not. It's not all. It's not all. I mean, when we're having conversations like this, when we start saying they, we're referring to the feminist groups and figures who say these kinds of things. I mean, I'm not going to open every single sentence with, and the specific feminists we're talking about. Once you're in a conversation, you just start saying they, referring to the people you were just talking about before. So no, it's not about all feminists.
I
but,
do
well, you're
realize that
kind of
tribalism
catastrophic
is.
by acting like all women are being taught that all men are bad, and then everything's going to be bad because we're seeing the early stages of genocide against men.
Well, I
To
think
be honest,
It's a boomer
women
mentality.
are being.
I do think that all women are being taught that. Not all women believe it. I think most women don't believe it, but I think there are people who would want to teach all women that and are trying to teach all women that. They're not being successful, but they're trying to. Absolutely.
Literally
You heard
everyone.
of the.
They're trying to teach literally everyone that. If you look on modern TV shows and things like that, they will literally say that men are inferior to women and things like that. I mean, I can give you video clips of this happening, and I can show you in kids shows this happening. Like, I've got a screenshot right, just a couple of days ago. I got it from a Netflix show, like where they're preaching about toxic masculinity and things like that to little kids. It is absolutely happening. It's in classrooms. I wouldn't say all classrooms, but it's in a lot of classrooms, and it's being worked into the curriculum, and it's being basically treated as a fact, even though it's never actually, been established as one. And we get in stories every single day from boys who are saying, "Oh, in my classroom, the teacher was talking and ranting about all this crazy nonsense and stuff like that." And like the girls are buying it, and like you get the teachers saying that all war is caused by men, and then like a girls are looking smug and they're dissing on the boys because the boys are part of the evil gender and stuff like that. It's a whole thing, and it is centered around these core academics, which is what I said. I didn't say all feminists because I actually know feminists who are really nice, and I think they're just misguided. They're in the wrong ideology. They think they're in the equality ideology, but they're actually in the crazy sociopath ideology. And it's only when you push towards the top levels of this that you actually get to that, which is something else I said. It's like I said, the academics shield and the crazy feminists shield the common people from these, talking points that are only at the top end of academia in, gender studies, like the reduce the population of men by 90% using eugenics. That's an actual thing from actual feminist academics who are key feminist academics. I'm talking about Mary Daly. I'm talking about Sally Miller Gerhardt. These are people who have won awards from major feminist organizations. They are people who are considered like top-ranking feminist theorists, founders of the movement, all that sort of stuff. It's not just like it's more complicated than us versus them, but we do say they when we mean the crazies. We're not talking about like the ones who are actually, like I said, the nice ones. But we do have to say they because there is a they, and they treat us as a they, and we don't really want to, but we kind of have to treat them as a they because they are. They are the
Exactly.
ones.
The
Yeah,
people who
they
are
are the ones who fight against our equal rape laws that we put in. Like in India, in Israel, in England, in America, they always pop up, they always tear down the equal law, and then they vanish off without any real sort of discussion about it. And if you say anything to contradict them, then you are an evil man who supports rapists. And it's insane. It's this whole Motte and Bailey thing again. It's rules lawyering. It's
The people
everything to
who
do
I
with it.
call, if I can, the people who I would describe as they are the people who would describe me as they.
Yeah, it's the ones who deliberately set out to take, for example, every male group on the internet and lump them together in a specific way in order to task specific ones. For example, they'll take what they'll say is male far right groups. In actual fact, the far right is equally male and female. And if you think otherwise, then you've got your head in the sand. But they'll take the specifically male elements of those groups, they'll lump them all together into one, they'll call it the manosphere, and then they'll start adding other groups they don't like us, and then they'll spread it around in the media, which they control, and they'll spread it to their friends, and they write academic papers on it which have no citations, except for, like Michael Flood said, and they will put it on Wikipedia, and it becomes a fact. Look at the Manosphere page on Wikipedia. That is them controlling information. That is them fighting facts with lies that they have come up with. It is them controlling academia. It is them basically ruling over information and deciding what is true and what is not. And yeah, they have a word for it. They call it special objectivity. I don't know if anyone here has heard of that one. But special objectivity, look that one up on Wikipedia. It basically means applying a feminist perspective to the facts, or to anything really. And what it really means is bias. And I'm sorry if I've been ranting a little bit, but I do get like a little bit steamed when we are accused of being tribalistic back, and it's this whole thing of, oh, we can't say the bad words. You're the naughty people. You're not allowed to. You've got to go to class and learn all about our stuff while we use the naughty words, and we are actually sexist, and so on and so forth. It's that whole thing, they're the sexist ones. They're the ones who don't want the equal rape laws. They're the ones who don't want all of this, good stuff that they pretend they want, and they'll shoot it down as soon as it happens. And they'll reconstruct, like, we've got a domestic violence law right in Parliament right now in the UK, and they are pissing all over it. It used to be equal. It used to be totally neutral. But then they formed this special committee of feminists who abuse men, and we know they abuse men because it's been in the papers that specific members of this group abuse men. And they'll go and they'll say, oh, we've got to have a gendered domestic violence law. And this is all in the domestic violence charities and all that sort of stuff. We've got quotes from them saying, good on you, so-and-so, for, fighting for a gendered law on rape, because of course, mostly women are raped, mostly women are domestically abused and stuff like that, and so we've got to have a gendered law. And why would we have an ungendered law when that could potentially be used against women, even though that's totally impossible? And they'll just worm and wiggle until they get what they want, and they do get what they want because they know they're favored. They know they actually do have privilege, but they will project that privilege onto men and whoever they want to get things from until they get what they want. It's a whole system of like psychos, crazies, and people who just want power, and they're just using all of our chivalrous instincts and so on and so forth against us. It is,
And
I've said it before, weaponized chivalry. Go on.
That's another reason why they get what they want, is because, like you said, they are psychopaths. They are narcissists, and they get what they want because regular humans our brains are not programmed to think that way. Most people just want to live their lives and enjoy their life. They don't obsessively calculate, how can we make laws to hurt other people? How can we make laws to manipulate people? How can we control language to control people? Regular people don't think that way. This is something that psychopaths do all the time, 24/7. And it's why psychopaths are very successful in politics as CEOs. It's why psychopaths very often get to positions of power, because their brains are wired in a different way. Their brains are wired 24/7 to think this way. Whereas the average person pretty much never thinks this way. The average person has no motivation to go out of their way to harass or bother people who they've never even met. And so most people are completely, wholly unprepared to defend themselves from that. And so when MRAs try and tell people about feminists, like the bad feminists, and what's going on, we get a lot of pushback because most people think, no, feminists aren't like that. They wouldn't do that. Why would anybody do that? An average person can't understand that kind of mentality or that kind of mindset because it just doesn't make sense to people. Like I can't fathom wanting to do that. But the more you look into it and the more you go through someone's Twitter accounts who is a prominent feminist figure, or who wrote an article for The Guardian 3 years ago, or who was quoted in this article as being a founder of this feminist group, whatever it is. And then you start seeing the inconsistencies and the toxicity, an ongoing pattern over years. You realize this person's a psychopath. This person's a narcissist. And this person is one of the people who makes these academic definitions. This is one of the respected academic figures who wrote that literature, who became a part of feminist theory, or who is the leader of this prominent feminist organization. And so they're seen as a respected, mainstream, legitimate person. And that's why it's very difficult to argue against them. And they control the narrative, and they have much more media influence than MRAs do. And so they can really kind of get away with whatever they want.
Yeah, it's you. You go on these Wikipedia pages and you look at the actual citations. They're all feminist papers, and you just read through them, and there's just nothing there that's actually true. You check their citations if there even are any, and you find people like Michael Flood making an offhand, snarky comment about like MRAs being far right or something, when we actually aren't. We're like one of the most centrist non-partisan groups out there, and it's just like we have left-wing people and right-wing people and like all sorts of other people here. And if if you start a political debate here, you will find people on all sides very rapidly. But they make us out to be things here. Sorry?
Yeah, you finish up. Finish up.
You say they make us out to be things that we aren't because it gives them control. Like Nazi doesn't mean anything anymore. It just means bad person, and you apply that to other people, and it smears them with all of the crimes of the actual Nazis. And like then they feel like they have to defend against that, and suddenly you're in a position of power, and they have burden of proof for some reason to prove that they're not a Nazi. And you'll see that going all the way back, through everything. The Nazis did it as well. Like they would accuse people of being like, like supporting the gays and things.
I gotta run. I'll see you guys next
Okay,
week.
Blue. Yeah. All right, see you, Blue. Yeah, they'll do all that sort of stuff as well. It's just like this is a whole. It's just a tool that they use. Anyway, sorry, Kilgore, you were gonna say something?
Yeah, I was going to say, like what you said, that they're actually really nice feminists out there. Women who actually know what feminist stands for, the whole thing of equality of the sexes. My mother's an example of that. My mother has this little pet peeve she does. When we go somewhere, like we go to an event or something, and whoever's in charge is a man, she would just be there and she would pout and she would be like, why isn't it a woman? And then we just ignore her and then we just let it go and then nothing comes out of it. But then to her, it's that thing that a woman should have the opportunity to do that, and she accepts that. And that is what true feminism is. where you just look at, oh, it could be this way. It's a possibility that it could be this way. I'd like it if it was that way. And if it was that way, it'd be actually really cool. That is feminism, where you just accept the fact that a woman can do it and it is by choice that she should do it, not by force. But then these feminists, they even tend to turn against their own female friends who don't agree with them. I mean, it's weird because there was this lady who did this documentary called The Red Pill, I believe, and she was talking. She was when she was doing that documentary, she was a full on feminist activist. She was, the whole 10 yards of crazy. But then she went around interviewing MRA members, and she realized that it was never like a movement against women. It was a movement for women and men. It was a movement that actually embodies the true principles of feminism. And she came out to say flat out and simple that she no longer subscribes to certain feminist ideologies. And for the first time in her life, she got hate mail from her own feminist friends. She got hate mail, she got threats. People were boycotting the movie, people wrote petitions to get the documentary taken down. And I'm like, if you are really for equality, why are you turning against your own woman? Why? It doesn't make any sense. Your ally who has gone behind so-called enemy lines and have come back to tell you, her friends, her allies, her team, that maybe we got this whole thing wrong, and you all just point your guns at her and started taking shots. Why would you do that? Like you said, that is Nazi ideology. There
Mm.
were stories of Nazi soldiers who had interactions with Jews and realized Jews weren't that bad. And the moment they expressed those views, they were tossed in the gas chamber along with the Jews.
Yeah,
So you,
well, it's why they say narrative instead of fact. We talk about the fact, they talk about the narrative, and they talk about controlling the narrative, and they talk about building the narrative and stuff like that. Because what they have realized is that what is true isn't as important to a political ideology as what the story is that they're telling. And the story that they tell is all about women being oppressed and so on and so forth. I found it interesting that you said that your grandmother, was it? She said that, it could be or should be a woman who's in charge of this event.
my mother, like, what? It's a little pet peeve of hers that she does. It's something that she uses to get on our nerves. Where when we go to an event and maybe it's a man in charge, she'd ask, "Why isn't it a woman?" She wouldn't pursue it. She would just say that. But then
Mm.
I've had this talk about feminism with my mom, and she's like, she's not for all this weird stuff that feminists keep talking about. What she wants is a situation that if a woman wants to progress in a certain field, although it may be male dominated, she has the opportunity to compete and has the opportunity to bring what she can to the table. And if it does merit such rewards, she gets it. That's what she says. That's basically her line of thought for feminism.
I don't know. It sounds to me an awful lot like she thinks that it's bad if a woman isn't in charge.
No, 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 no. What I said, she uses that to get on our nerves. Because my dad actually hates this whole feminist movement thing. It gets on his nerves. It pisses him off because to him, if men did not decide to help women achieve what they have today, they will not get the chance to be standing up on pedestals and be launching all kinds of hate messages against men. So that's my dad's stance on feminism. But my mom says that whole "why isn't a woman in charge" thing to get on my dad's nerves. Like it's a joke. She doesn't really try
I
to.
see.
Yeah.
Well, fair enough. But I mean, I would argue that that's not the real feminism, because the real feminism is what's driving the movement. And the real feminism is really just that uprising against equality that basically gets, you know, takes out, takes, you know, equal laws and even mangles them or gets rid of them and impl- implants these like really unequal laws instead. I mean, the core of the movement is gender studies and things like that. It's all this sort of stuff where they, you know, all this academic stuff, and we can't separate that from feminism. So, I mean, you could say that there's a variety of feminism and call it equality feminism, which actually is centered on equality and actually does want fairness. But honestly, I'd argue that's egalitarianism with feminist leanings more than anything. But yeah, I have met several very, very nice feminists who do care about like men's rights and stuff like that. We had one on the subreddit uh, MRA memes a little while ago, and I won't tell you her name, but she was very, very nice, and she was very concerned with like men having equal rights as well. She saw us as counterparts, and she was like, "Don't worry, I'm not like these bad, you know, like these really nasty feminists," and she wasn't. But at the same time, that "don't worry, I'm not like these really nasty ones" is kind of a warning sign for your movement. It's you know, okay, every movement has their bad guys. You know, they have their like their really nasty sort of like you know, they're crazies because every, you know, you can't really filter crazies out of a movement when it's big enough. But at the same time, the majority of the movement should do everything in their power to isolate that person from the movement and, if possible, try to decondition them, try to get them help, try to help them to not see things so, you know, in
Ironically
such
speaking,
black and white evil terms. Huh?
ironically, yeah, it's actually the other way around with the current feminist movement. The women who are rather objective about the whole thing, they try to look at both sides of the coin. They are the ones who are rather ostracized and stigmatized and treated like the enemy, you know. And
Yeah,
when it comes to dealing with, like you said, having the true essence of feminism, what I mean when I say that this is the true way of feminism, I'm referring to the first wave feminism, the original feminism, the first of its kind, the one
you
that
mean the
demanded
terrorists?
what?
Do you mean the terrorists?
Not terrorists per se, but basically the women who
The one
asked
who were
for.
planting bombs in the Bank of England and in cathedrals and things like that, and burning down schools and
No, 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 no,
uh,
no,
no,
not that. I don't know what you're
so not the
talking about, man.
suffragettes then,
That is scaring me, but hey,
not the
what I
suffragettes
mean,
then.
what'd you say?
I said not the suffragettes then.
No, 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 no. Basically, what I'm talking about is those women who went to parliament, asked for right to vote, asked for the same opportunities as men and all that. Those women who were admitted to the fact that, yes, we may be different, but we can still do the same things together. You know, that is the kind
Uh,
of that is the kind of feminism I'm talking about. That's basically the kind of feminism that I was introduced to by my mom. I'm someone who I don't mind if a woman is in charge. I don't mind if a woman is my boss. I don't mind if a woman is ahead of me. I really don't give a damn. You know,
yeah,
that's the
that's
kind of
suffragists, the suffragist movement, not jet but gist, women's lib sort of thing. But I do take like I should say that they didn't want equal rights, even if like that's the way it's portrayed now, because uh, at the time that the votes for women thing was going through, uh, most men didn't have the vote in the UK, and the men who did have the vote worldwide, it was because they it was as a reward for submitting to the draft. And the suffragists and the suffragettes and the women's lib people, none of them wanted that. None of them wanted women to be treated like men. And one of the major reasons for the opposition to the women's vote was women who were genuinely terrified that they'd be treated like men. And that is something that has been completely forgotten by basically everyone.
I see. That's
Yeah,
something I did not know about. I do know about the whole draft thing, but
yeah.
the whole anti-opposition thing I didn't know about. Thank you for teaching me this.
No worries. It's you've just got to be very, 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 very careful about any kind of like what public knowledge or like stuff like that. That's what's common knowledge about gender is typically either feminist propaganda or just general sort of people forgetting about stuff. It's like this is the reason that people don't know the suffragettes. The suffragettes were terrorists, and that they blew up some quite important things. They blew up the coronation throne, intending to kill a bunch of people. It failed. They planted a bomb at the Bank of England. It failed. We do suspect that they did kill people, but we haven't been able to find hard evidence of that. We found a lot of evidence of them attempting to kill people in mass and just randomly, especially men. Like the Bank of England thing, that was an attack on especially men, and they've been known to, like, there was a particular greenhouse, a large public greenhouse that was patrolled by a night watchman, and they basically followed behind him, snuck behind him, planted bombs around the edge of the greenhouse, and he found one like on the ground, hissing fuse sort of thing, and he managed to stop it. And just as he stopped that bomb, the rest of them exploded and knocked him clean off his feet, broken glass flying everywhere. They intended to kill him. Like, they knew he was there. They intended to kill him. They found, the police found a blanket up on the hill with champagne glasses and a bottle of champagne and a picnic because they were waiting for the bombs to go off. And you have to realize the suffragettes were actually incredibly wealthy women. They didn't want a vote for the common woman, really. They wanted a vote for the rich women, which would be equal to the household vote, which was usually controlled by men. So, like 10% of the population could vote because they owned large amounts of property and stuff like that. And the suffragettes, they basically they wanted that as well. They wanted to be able to control that vote. So they wanted an equal vote for the rich women, which is a big part of the reason that they totally ignored all that stuff with the draft, because they wouldn't be subject to it because they were wealthy.
I see.
Yeah,
what did you call them?
There's the suffragettes. Sorry, I'm not very good at speaking with S's, but suffragettes and suffragists. I can spell it in the chat if you want.
Suffragettes and suffragists. Okay. Interesting. This is quite the history lesson.
Oh, which one were the terrorists?
Both, apparently. And I don't get that thing where feminists try to force other women into accepting their narrative. I mean, isn't the whole point of you fighting for quote unquote equality being the woman's ability or the woman's right to make choices that will determine where her path in life goes. Because I do quite remember there was this issue about a kindergarten teacher. She had, you know, a variety of students, both boys and girls, but she went to the extent of banning the boys from playing with Legos. Apparently boys are constructive in nature in their younger years. So in the younger years, they like to build stuff, play with Legos, build things together, put it together. That is what leads men into the STEM courses: science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And women or girls, little girls, naturally move towards the um, let me say the humanitarian aspect of things. Hence why they play with Barbie dolls and they have little tea parties and have pretend like they're mothers and they nurture the dolls and whatnot. This teacher went as far as banning the boys from playing with Legos and went as far as forcing the little girls to. The girls had no idea what to do with the Legos, but she didn't care. She was like, no, they should play with them. When she was asked, she actually dared to say this. And she was like, boys have had their turn for so long. That is the turn of women. And they told her, but it looks like the women or the girls in question here don't want to play with the Legos. And she went on by defending her point. She went to defend her point by saying, when we um, place them in an environment where they have no other choice than to play with Legos, they will end up playing with Legos and to create that constructive psyche to let women and to let females into the STEM environment. And people were like, that is very, very, let me say, oppressive and questionable, because basically you're taking away the child's right to choose what they want to do in life. Mm, I just don't get it. Or you know what? It's feminism. No one gets it.
It's tribalism. She sees it as us versus them. She's realized that Lego helps boys' brains develop. And the article on that I saw was that she was trying to sabotage the boys to help the girls. And I mean, I would like any other articles on that you've got, but it's like this us versus them thing. The girls are us, the boys are them, and I'm going to teach the girls to play with Legos so they can be like the boys because I believe in social constructivism and I'm a lunatic and stuff like that. I shouldn't say I because it's her, but it's like social constructivism is where you believe that in the have you ever heard of tabula rasa? It's the blank state of mind. It's a really outdated model of thinking where babies are just blank slates and they learn whatever you teach them and stuff like that, and they don't have any instincts or any personality of their own until you imprint it onto them. Totally wrong. But they believe in that sort of thing where they can basically take girls and turn them into boys. But if you actually look at it, then the kind of girls who are interested in STEM are tomboys usually. And the kind of boys who are interested in art are often like girly boys.
Effeminate.
Yeah.
Yeah, effeminate boys.
Mm. I mean, there's only a couple of people. I mean, I used to do this art class, and it was almost entirely women, and they were all feminists. And there was like two or three guys. One of them dropped out. Well, there's actually four, and two dropped out. Sorry, and the two that were left were not straight. So it's like it's that sort of dynamic. There are things that push us towards particular interests, and that's why the girls, if they play with Lego, will probably build a house or something like that, and then they'll play dollies with the house. And that's the extent of their interest in Lego. It's just to get them this particular toy that they want, which is the house. And they'll if you approach it from the point of view of them making a pretty house, they'll get into the idea that what they're basically doing is decorating, and they'll get interested in it because, like, girls are interested in decoration and things like that because their role is, traditionally in, like, since cavemen times, has basically been to look after the family. Men are the hunters, women are basically the gatherers traditionally. And breaking out of that mentality is a lot harder than just giving girls Lego. But you can help boys and girls to think a little bit like each other by, particular, like little strategies that help them, like, to not break free of this, but to help them to grow so that they can encompass more things than they might otherwise have done. Like in Sweden, I think it was, they were trying to get girls to go barefoot in the snow because it's a traditional boy thing there, where they'll jump out into the snow barefoot and run about a bit and see how long they can stand it for, and then run back in again. And it's like they'll teach them to do that to try and make them braver and more like the boys, and then they'll take the boys and they'll teach them, like, I can't remember exactly what it is, but it was a traditionally female sort of like discipline, like cooking or something. They'd try and get them to do a bit of that. So it's not really, in that circumstance, it's not about making boys into girls and girls into boys. It's more about broadening their horizons. It's about getting the girls to be a little bit more brave and the boys to possibly be a little bit more domestic, in their ability range, so that they've got this little thing that they can do as well as everything that they also have, and that's good. What's not good is trying to do this thing where they flip the genders and try to turn girls into boys and boys into girls, because it doesn't work. It's very bad for them, and it has led to multiple suicides that I can name. Like, there's that one boy who lost his penis in a circumcision. He's a very famous case who's usually used to
I know
prove.
that case. I
Yeah,
know that case where his mom and his dad decided that if he lost his penis, he might as well just grow up as a girl. And
yeah,
as he grew up, he realized that instead of playing with dolls like the normal girls would, he preferred to play soccer with his little brother. I think that was
yeah.
twin. And it caused a lot of issues where I think he attempted to murder his brother
I
before
didn't hear about
committing
that.
suicide. I know that case. I know that case. That was a messed up one. I know that.
Yeah, they did. The doctor did weird sexual things to the boys. It was
What?
really, yeah, yeah, yeah. He'd pose them in sexual sort of poses to, like,
Really?
simulate sex. Yeah, and he would do all sorts of weird things like that. They were basically an experiment to him, and it's kind of a lesson in how you know science without morality can turns into Nazism very quickly. Like the Nazi eugenics sort of stuff, where they would basically inject people with petrol to see what happened.
Wait, they did that?
Yeah, the Nazis did all sorts of stuff like that. They'd inject people, like children, and, like, just anyone they could get who was an undesirable, with things like petrol or weird chemicals, and they would just see what happens. They'd see how long it took them to die. And there's an entire body of scientific research which is kind of not considered real science anymore because the Nazis did it. And it was all to do with, like, torturing Jews and things like that, and
Mm-hmm.
killing them and stuff. It's pretty horrifying stuff.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's something.
Mm. But that's where you end up if you do that sort of thing without morality, and you need morality. But like this case of this boy who committed suicide because he wanted to be a boy and because that's what he knew he was, is used to prove that social constructivism, gender constructivism, it works. Like that you can take a boy from birth and turn him into a girl, or vice versa, and that there won't be any side effects or anything like that. It's just that they leave off the bad bits, and it's yeah. Welcome to the world of the messed up world of gender studies here.
Yeah, that is one place I would never want to walk into, a gender studies class. You can shoot me for free for that one.
Oh yeah, we've seen the textbooks. They are absolutely brain thumpingly insane. Like they'll say things like homeless men still exhibit hegemonic masculinity, and what they mean by that is they basically still have male privilege, and male privilege is already a myth. So
wait, homeless men.
yeah,
Someone
yeah,
who doesn't have
homeless
a
men
penny to
are
his
more
name.
privileged. Yeah, they'll say things like homeless men are more privileged than like insert famous black woman here. Like what was it? Oprah Winfrey, I think, was the example. And
Excuse me?
yeah, they say stuff like this. It's like well, I wouldn't say they believe it, but they'll construct all these weird theories where they try and mangle the truth until it resembles what they want.
No, this is not mangling. This is just blatant falsehood.
Well, yeah.
Anyone with an iota of common sense would just look at that and just be like, "What are you trying to say?"
Well, what they did was they went to the homeless men and they looked at how the homeless men behaved and they researched them and they basically talked to them, interviewed them and stuff like that. And then they tried to pick out different bits of their personalities and how they acted to say that these men are, they're still masculine and therefore they're still male oppressors.
What?
And it's, yeah. Well, this is how they work. They said carbon.
Basically, you're telling me
Yeah.
that they are saying that all masculine traits are oppressive.
Oh yeah, yeah. This
Or
is the position of the American Psychological Association now. Masculinity is a mental condition, basically. They frame it in nicey terms, but that's what it boils down to. I mean, the feminist, the gender studies people, they have studies saying, essays and things like that, saying carbon fiber is sexist because it allows disabled male athletes to form male social circles centered around sports. That's a citation that's on the Men Are Human website in the citations page if you want to look at it.
carbon fiber. No, cow. Oh God. I'm completely lost for this one.
Yeah, it's all about the narrative and stuff like that. It's
This is a narrative. This is pure delusion.
well, that's what the narrative is, really. The narrative is a story they tell, which basically amounts to a pack of lies, manipulations, and so on and so forth, which they mangle together until it looks legitimate, and then they package it out as truth using academia. Like there's a whole system. We've got a flowchart of it somewhere of how it works, with them basically taking people and sending them out to do these studies and then using the data from these studies in a manipulated way to say what they want. It's that whole lies, damn lies, and statistics thing. Like, for example, we've got a study, I can't remember where I put it, but it's basically what they do is they took a bunch of college students and they gave them this survey to find out if they hate men or not, in order to find out if feminists hate men more than regular people. And they then basically defined feminism in a way that excludes man hating, just enough to make it look like the two groups were like pretty much equal, but mainstream people hate men more. Like just very slightly more. It's like it was very, very carefully set up, and you won't actually like this is a study that's been cited in multiple newspapers. Like I found out about it because feminists sent me news articles saying, look, feminists don't hate men. And then you actually look at the study and you read the method that they used, and you realize that actually they baked their conclusion into the study in such a way that the data would show that feminists don't hate men more than regular people do. It's yeah. If you're interested, there's an entire lecture by Donald Dutton on how they do this in domestic violence, like in the domestic violence industry.
Very funny enough, yeah. You know the way most feminists have advocated a lot for lesbian rights and all that, and they advocate for more lesbian relationships and whatnot. The funny thing is, when you look at the statistics, apparently spousal violence in lesbian relationships is close to 15 to 20% higher than in normal heterosexual relationships. And I'm like, wow, this is interesting. So basically, you all, just the two of you living together, is more violent than a man and a woman. And you turn around and still say, we are the violent race. Wow, okay.
Well, they do that. I'm surprised they haven't started saying, well, lesbians are more violent because they're more masculine or something stupid like that. Which is, yeah, and like if you wanted to do the gender studies route and basically try and worm your way around that, that's how you do it. You'd say that gay relationships, which are less violent, are like that because gay people are more feminine, which is sometimes true, but it's a stereotype. Like, I've met some incredibly girly lesbians, and I've met some incredibly masculine gay men.
Same here.
Yeah, like it's not really like the stereotypes aren't really true. In a lot of cases, gay men who are very feminine are like that because they are buying into the culture of like the gay culture, which is a bit feminine, like, and they're acting like the gay walk, the gay hand flop, the gay accent. That is for the most part fake. Like they're putting that on. Yeah.
True.
I'm telling you this as a gay guy. It's not really.
Oh, you're gay?
Yes, I'm gay, and I'm telling you it's not really the case that gay guys like this. I mean, a lot of gay guys have a feminine inclination, but
True.
it's not all of them.
True.
And a lot of them are hypermasculine, and the ones who aren't hypermasculine are often putting it on a bit. Like they'll push it until it becomes a habit, and then they're not acting anymore, and it's just their personality. They basically changed their personality to be a gay stereotype. And I think that kind of gay guy has actually stopped being as common since the basically the advent of like gay people hitting the mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're anything like as common anymore. But you do run into them quite a bit, like the and there's nothing wrong with like that if you want to do it. But I'm just saying it is a stereotype, and people do play into it, and
Mm.
it's very hard if a gay person doesn't want to be identified as such. It is very, 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 very difficult to realize that, because they're training themselves in the opposite direction. They're training themselves to be like a straight person,
Mm-hmm.
and they won't you know they might even get married to a woman in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's it's just like the catty feminine gay guy is a thing, but like often they turn out to be trans as well. Those types.
True. True.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
Very very often they do turn out to be trans. Those ones.
true.
It's it goes the same way with lesbians as well. Like the really really butch ones will often turn out to be basically trans men, and it's I also have kind of a theory that a lot of the women who are interested in STEM are the ones who are like more masculine, uh, more often bisexual, that sort of
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
But that is again a stereotype, and you might find a lot of very like if you go into one of these classes where there are girls in STEM, you might find that quite a few of them are girly, and that they are there because they are interested in it for whatever reason. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have the course I'm doing, computer
Mhm.
science. My basically you can say like a course representative. It's a girl,
Mhm.
yeah, and girl. She's a girl, and she is very feminine, but she does have a touch of masculinity in there, just a touch. It shows in the way she walks sometimes, you know,
Mm.
and she always wears jeans, and she she speaks the same lingo as the guys and all that. But then she is very feminine, you know. Her voice is very feminine. She has feminine leanings and all that. And there's also this one other girl in my class. She's also very effeminate. There is no touch of masculinity in her. Very effeminate. And she's good. She's very good at what she does.
Mm.
She's very good. Computer science, writing the code and all that. I mean, there were times where I was stumped. I had no idea where to turn. And she gave me a hand, and I wrote, and she was good at it. Better than me. Better than the guy. Yeah, so
That's fine. Yeah. I mean, we don't mind that. We don't really
we don't
care.
care. We actually don't care. We
Yeah.
we don't give a damn. It's
Oh yeah.
funny. It's just so funny the way we just don't give a damn.
Yeah. We honestly don't care that there's like women in STEM or whatever. I mean, I'd be quite happy if STEM was 50-50 men and women. The
Oh
first
yeah,
time
it'd
I
be
heard it
fun.
wasn't was
It'd be
from people
really fun.
complaining about it. Hmm?
I said it'd be really fun if it was 50-50.
Yeah.
It'd be really, really interesting. Because it's mostly
Well.
male dominated. And I remember when I entered into uni, the first time I sat in my class, like 80% of us were guys. And all of us were so mad. We were so incensed. We were like, what the hell? We spent our lives around boys, and when we come to uni, we're still around boys. And it was just for like 3 weeks of the first month of school. It was just people throwing tantrums left and right, and it was just so funny.
Yeah. Uh, did you say that like most of them were lesbians or something?
I beg your
Well, I
pardon.
kind of missed a bit about that.
Like I said, like when we started school, when we started uni, and in my
Mm.
class, 80% of us were boys, and most of us just went ballistic. We were so mad because we were like in our younger years, coming up. I think in the country I live in, when you go to high school, we have all boys high school, we have all girls high schools, and we have mixed high schools. You know, and most boys, attend all boys high schools. So for 3 to 4 years, you're basically not gonna be around women. You know, and we all held out with this ideology or with this promise in our minds that when we get to uni, the girls will be in abundance and we won't have to, and like staying 3 years or 4 years without women being around was going to be worth it. So when we came to uni and we realized that it was still just boys in our class, we were like, fuck that, no.
Yeah, you should have gone over to the humanities departments.
Ah, yeah,
They're
true.
all in, yeah,
They were all in the business class. So many
yeah.
boys. It got to a point people were not coming to class. They were intentionally sneaking up to the business faculty just to sneak into the classroom and be with the women. I was like, yo, you boys are just
Mm. I mean, that does sound like it'd be very, very frustrating for somebody who isn't me. But yeah, yeah, I understand. I mean, I'd feel the same way if I was stuck in a class full of all girls.
really.
It's yeah. Well, then again, in the class of all girls, the guys who are there tend to be gay, so it's kind of yeah, like not all of them, but a lot of them, you know. And the
I
ones
see.
who aren't tend to leave pretty quickly because they realize it's bullshit, which it was. Yeah. I wish I'd gone on a writing course, to be honest. I'd be so much further ahead in life if I'd gone on a writing course.
I see.
But university it doesn't really matter anymore. We've got YouTube tutorials on the internet and stuff like that,
True,
and
true,
yeah,
true.
you can learn some really advanced things just on YouTube, and
Mhm.
you don't need like universities. You can do the course online. A lot of universities now, and they only charge you the huge stupid amount of money if you want the diploma,
Mm,
which is quite
true.
funny. If you just want the certificate saying you've passed the course, then it's actually like 80 quid or something for a whole university course at Stanford.
Oh,
Yeah,
80.
I've got them. Yeah, I've got them bothering me about like I looked at a particular course once and signed up my email address for it to have a look, and it's like 80 quid for this entire course. It's not it's I can't remember what the qualification you'd get out of it if you actually went through it properly is, but yeah, universities they don't actually teach you very much.
Yeah,
Like I
true.
went to university and I didn't really learn anything. And then I
Yep.
look on YouTube and I watch like programming tutorials and I learn 1,000 times more.
Yeah. Because
Mm.
currently I'm in Coventry University. It's trash, honestly speaking.
Mm.
It's annoying. The professors have no idea what they're doing sometimes. And
Mm.
they give you very scanty material to work with. So if you really want to get the knowledge that you're looking for, you're gonna have to go look for it yourself. So most of us have signed up for these Udemy courses, and we've watched YouTube tutorials, downloaded a lot of them, and we've
Yeah.
basically just scoured the internet for all kinds of material that we need. So we come to class, we take notes, we listen to what the teacher said. The moment we walk out, we just toss it aside and just go right back to the internet.
Yeah. That sounds a lot like my class. My class they showed us more conspiracy films than anything else. I mean, luckily I
Conspiracy.
have other qualifications. I was basically just using that as a social group while I was depressed, to be honest. It was, yeah, yeah. I shouldn't have really. I should have just gone for a writing course or for anything else, literally anything else. Worst possible degree I could have gotten, but I went through it purely because I really, really just wanted somewhere to hang out, and there was nowhere else, and I wanted to talk to intelligent people and stuff like that. and it turned out the class was full of idiots, and the teachers were idiots, and yeah, it was very, very ideological. It was a lesson in how they basically try to teach you ideology, and that they'll like suggest books that aren't anything to do with the course. One of them sent me to this, I won't say the name of it, but a particular propaganda film that I researched thoroughly enough to know that basically everything in it was a lie. Like there wasn't anything true in it. It was actually based on Nazi propaganda that was repackaged, and it wasn't anything to do with race or anything like that. But it was literally Nazi propaganda that had been repackaged, and they didn't even know that. I had to go and find that out on my own.
Mm.
Like some really crazy stuff in US. They were trying to get us to be Marxists and stuff like that, and they'd. I'm depressing myself. Okay, I think this has come to a natural end, so I think that I'm going to call it now, and I'll say goodnight to all of you because I've really got to get something to eat. So
Okay.
good night, everyone,
Good night.
and thank you for tuning in.